arrived in the villages of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "What are people saying about who the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some think he is John the baptizer, and some say Elijah, some Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He pressed them, "And how about you? Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus came back. "God bless you, Simon, son of Jonah. You didn't get that answer out of books or from teachers. My Father in heaven, God himself, let you in on this secret of who I really am. And now I'm going to tell you who you really are. You are Peter, a rock. This is the rock on which I will put together my church, a church so expansive with energy that not even the gates of hell will be able to keep it out. And that's not all. You will have complete and free access to God's kingdom, keys to open any and every door. No more barriers between heaven and earth or earth and heaven. And yes on earth is yes in heaven. A yes on earth is a yes in heaven. And no on earth is no in heaven. He swore the disciples to secrecy. He made them promise they would tell no one that he was the Messiah. The Gospel of the Lord. So I think it was around May. I'm not sure, but I think it was about May. I got a hold of this tome, T-O-M-E, book called Obion Seed. And it's about 900 pages or something like that about the 4 strands of people who came into the United States from the United Kingdom. And the first strand was about the Puritans. And the second was about the people, and they settled in the Northeast. And then the next one was about the people who settled in Pennsylvania, the Friends, the Quakers. And then the third group was the Scotch-Irish that actually came to the United States and went into the back country. And then the fourth group was the indentured servants of Southern England, who came in and settled in the southern part of Virginia. So I was fascinated with this book, and I'll be honest, I didn't read the whole thing. I only read the part about the Scotch-Irish because I knew from hearing things that that's where my people come from. And what amazed me about this, and I've shared this with many of you, is the similarities that I read about a people back 250 years ago and how their characteristics and the way they do things and the way they talk and their language, that sort of thing, is still relevant today. I mean, I grew up in West Virginia, and he listed a couple pages of words that for all practical purposes would be archaic. And I knew every single one of them because the people that I grew up with still used that language that came from the people that came over. Those people, the Scotch-Irish, you probably know this, but I didn't. They were from the borderlands between Scotland and England. And because they were from that area, they were kind of a rough people, a very rough people, because they were always in battle because they were on the border. And so England and Scotland fought all the time, and there was a lot of upheaval, a lot of displacement, a lot of mayhem and uncertainty, and the people became pretty rough. And some of those people actually moved to Northern Ireland, but things were about the same there. And then there was a great migration into Pennsylvania, actually. And they were so rough that the people in Pennsylvania encouraged them to go into the backcountry. So Appalachia became populated with these people. one of the things that they did was they built log cabins, and they built kind of shanties. And you probably have seen pictures of the log cabins that have survived and they've refurbished, or you've seen pictures of the mountain cabins in Appalachia that are restored because they belong to Loretta Lynn or somebody like that. But most of the time, these structures actually fell apart because this people, they were so used to being upended and moved around that they stopped trying to build dwellings that would last. They built dwellings that were very, very, that just lasted long enough till the next raider came through and burned it down. And so the people that went into Appalachia kind of kept that tradition up. They didn't build things to last. Unlike the people in Pennsylvania, if you'll notice, if you've ever been to Pennsylvania, you'll notice all these stone structures. The people there, the Friends, who had kind of a German-Danish background, if you will, they would build everything to last forever. And so there were stone structures, stone barns, stone dwellings, stone cellars, stone smokehouses and things like that. And they're still there. They're still there. And I think it's kind of interesting that still, if you go into Appalachia, you'll still see a similar, only modern version of a temporary dwelling, because on every hillside you'll see a mobile home. There are mobile homes everywhere. Mobile homes, if you're familiar with them, are not very weather resistant. If a good strong wind comes along, it could topple it over, it can tear it up. They're not very resistant to tornadoes or hurricanes or any really bad stuff, but they're also not very stable, and they don't have a long lifespan, just like the shanties and just like the cabins, if they weren't restored and updated. Unlike their neighbors in Pennsylvania, because the neighbors in Pennsylvania built things to last, and how they built them was they built them from rock. So in today's gospel lesson, Jesus is talking about Peter's confession that he is the Messiah. He's the anointed one. And there's a lot of discussion on the Roman Catholic side versus the Protestant side about whether Peter really is the beginning of the church. I mean, they actually say, when I was ordained, that I'm in a direct lineage down from Peter of priest after priest after priest. And one of the things, just on an aside, that between the Lutherans and the Episcopalians, when we got together and joined, one of those issues that they had to kind of hammer out was what's known as apostolic succession, because the Lutherans don't quite believe in that, and the Episcopalians still hold on to that doctrine. And they did hash it out, and I would say that that what I'm going to present to you today is probably a more Protestant view of what's going on in this scripture. And this is the argument that the Protestants say, that it's not so much Peter in his humanity that is the beginning of the church, so to speak, but it's the faith that he has to name Jesus as the anointed one of God, that he has this faith that actually Jesus said didn't come from any place but God, that through the power of the Holy Spirit, this faith is infused in Peter, and it's as strong as a solid rock, because the foundation of our faith is so strong that it can outlast any prevailing wind or weather or storm that might come across. And so I think it's really important to see for us today that that Peter may well be the beginning of the church, but also that faith in Jesus is foundational. I mean, you all probably remember that hymn, "On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand." And it's basically to point out that when we stand on that rock of faith, when we are given by grace the gift of faith from God to understand where our foundation is, then we can go forward as disciples and followers of Jesus, but also people who take the gospel to others as well. Taking the gospel to others is not an easy task. And it takes having a strong faith to help sustain us and keep us in terms of being able to continue on in that journey. The thing about it is, when we take that, what we have come to enjoy, what we've come to know, what we've come to experience in terms of the love and compassion and tolerance and all those characteristics that we have as we try to live into Jesus' word, when we take that to others, we actually also take this foundational piece that they can also stand on with us and experience that solidness, if you will, that helps us get through all kinds of things, whether those are little things, little nitpicky things, like we're mad at the driver in front of us, or whether we have an argument, whether we feel betrayed by a friend, whether we have a disagreement in terms of theology or politics or philosophy, whatever it is. When we feel challenged and we feel taken away, in a sense, from that love of Christ because we're distracted by these things that try to distract us, like life, then we are better able to hang on to that rock when we're conscious of it, so that those little nitpicky things, just kind of like water erodes the mountain, right? You don't think about water being able to really tear up a whole mountain, but water can do that, just slowly but surely. And just like that, these little details in our lives, these little things that come across and try to pull us away from who we are and whose we are and who we aspire to be, those are the rock is what can keep us centered. The rock is also what keeps us centered when we are in the middle of a catastrophe, when we're in the middle of our life being turned completely upside down, when we are in the middle of great loss and unbearable grief, when we're in the middle of some accident or some force of nature, like what they're dealing with in California or what they dealt with in Iowa, where their whole life just seems to just be upended. Then the rock that is the faith is what sustains us in those moments. So I really want to just, this passage is rich. It was written, it's found in the 16th chapter of Matthew, and it's actually the part of time where Jesus is getting ready to go to Jerusalem. He's done all the ministry, he's done all the teaching, he's done all the healing, and now he's preparing his disciples to take the ministry beyond him. They don't know this yet, but that's what he's doing right now. He's trying to prepare them for what's going to happen in Jerusalem when they get there, and how their lives will be after that. And if you read the book, and the actual word that he's talking about is ecclesia, church. The word church isn't even invented during Jesus' time. And what ecclesia actually means is assembly. So it's his community that he's trying to shore up and help them recognize what will sustain them individually and collectively as they go forward, taking the love of God and trying to establish through God's grace, God's kingdom on this earth. So I invite you to remember that we have a firm foundation, and our foundation is more permanent than those stone houses up in Pennsylvania. Our foundation will withstand anything, any storm this world has to throw at us. We just have to remember it. We just have to remember it, that that's our faith, and it's a rock. So now we're going to have time to have a conversation